The phone on my desk wouldn't stop ringing, but I couldn't answer it. Not with the eviction notice still clutched in my hand. The red stamp, "Final Warning," was burned into my vision, each letter louder than the voice of the landlord shouting through the door. My bank account had less than $27 in it. My suppliers had cut me off. And the coffee shop I'd poured every last cent into just 31 days ago was now one power outage away from shutting down for good. I dreamed about this moment for years, owning my own place, being my own boss, finally escaping the corporate cubicle grind. I'd taken my entire life savings, maxed out my credit cards, and even sold my car to make it happen. And now, a month later, I was standing in the middle of the empty shop, the smell of burnt espresso still hanging in the air from the morning rush that never came, wondering how it had all gone so wrong so fast. I picked up the phone on the fifth ring, my voice cracking as I said, "Hello." It was my best friend, Mark, the only person who hadn't told me I was insane for doing this. "You need to get down here," he said, breathless. "Right now. There's something you need to see." I didn't know it yet, but what I was about to walk into would change everything, not just for the business, but for me. It was the moment I realized that the difference between a failure and a success wasn't luck. It was the one decision you make when you've already lost everything. 4 months earlier, I was sitting in a cramped lawyer's office with a pen in my hand, staring at the lease agreement that would lock me into paying $4,500 a month for the next 3 years. The landlord, a stocky man with a gold watch and too much cologne, sat across from me with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "It's a prime location," he said for the third time in 10 minutes. "You'll have foot traffic all day. Coffee practically sells itself here." I wanted to believe him. I'd been planning this coffee shop for years, Pinterest boards full of design ideas, spreadsheets of projected profits, even mock-up menus. In my head, it was perfect. The warm smell of fresh espresso, indie music playing in the background, regulars who knew my name, and enough income to finally prove to my parents that leaving my accounting job wasn't a mistake. But there was a warning sign I ignored that day. When I'd walked to the building for the viewing, I noticed 2 empty storefronts on the same block. Both had "For Lease" signs gathering dust in their windows. I told myself it was just bad luck for those businesses, that my shop would be different. I signed the papers anyway, my hand shaking slightly as I scrawled my name on the dotted line. The landlord's smile widened, and I swear there was something in his eyes that said, "Another one." That night, I transferred every dollar from my savings into my business account, $38,000 I'd scraped together over years of skipping vacations, driving an old beater car, and saying no to nights out. I maxed out 2 credit cards for another $12,000, telling myself it was just a short-term boost until we were profitable. Looking back now, I realize I'd set myself up like a gambler walking into a casino with his life savings, convinced he was too smart to lose. And the worst part? The first week felt like I was winning. Opening day was everything I thought it would be and more. The "Now Brewing" sign was lit, the chalkboard out front had my carefully hand-lettered specials, and the smell of freshly ground coffee spilled onto the sidewalk like an invitation. Mark was there before sunrise, helping me set up pastries from the local bakery and triple-check the espresso machine. I'd spent the entire week practicing latte art until my hands cramped, determined that every cup leaving my counter would look like something out of an Instagram post. By 7:30 a.m., the line was out the door. Office workers in crisp suits, college students with laptops slung over their shoulders, even a few curious tourists who'd wandered in from the nearby bus stop. They all came. I smiled until my cheeks hurt, handing out cappuccinos and matcha lattes while Mark kept the pastry case stocked. I made nearly $1,200 that first day. See, I told myself that night as I counted the cash. This is going to work. The first week was just as busy. My mornings started at 5 a.m., unlocking the front door in the dark and flicking on the warm amber lights. Customers greeted me by name, telling me how much they loved the vibe. A food blogger even posted a glowing review, calling my caramel oat milk latte life-changing. But somewhere between the second and third week, I noticed the line in the mornings getting shorter. A rainy Tuesday brought in barely half the usual crowd. Then Wednesday was slower still. By Thursday, I caught myself staring at the door, willing someone to walk through. Mark noticed too. "It's just the weather," he said, wiping down tables. "Things will pick back up." I wanted to believe him. But that Friday, when I took the deposit to the bank, I realized we'd made less than $400 in a day. My stomach sank. That was barely enough to cover supplies, let alone rent. Still, I told myself every business had slow days. I didn't see yet that the real problem wasn't slow days, it was what was happening just 3 blocks away. The first time I saw the sign, I was on my way to the bank with another light deposit. It was sleek, minimalist, white letters on matte black, Raven Coffee Roasters, opening soon. My chest tightened. The location? A corner spot right on the main pedestrian strip, 3 blocks from my shop, with twice the visibility and parking that didn't require parallel skills worthy of an Olympic medal. At first, I told myself it wouldn't matter. People liked my shop. They liked me. I had my regulars, my playlist, my signature lattes you couldn't find anywhere else. But within a week of Raven's opening, I saw the shift. The morning rush? Gone. Even some of my loyal customers, the ones who joked with me about their caffeine addictions, stopped coming in altogether. I ran into one of them, Emily, at the grocery store. She looked awkward when I asked how she'd been. "Oh, you know," she said, "just trying different places." She didn't say it, but I could tell she liked their vibe better. Raven had deep pockets. They offered $2 drip coffee for the first month, live music on weekends, and glossy Instagram ads targeting the exact neighborhood my shop was in. My marketing? A chalkboard out front and the occasional photo I posted to my 50 Instagram followers. The numbers started getting ugly. My rent was due in 10 days, and after paying suppliers, I had just over $1,000 in the account. My credit cards were creeping toward their limits. I stayed open later in the evenings, hoping to catch students or night owls, but most nights I was alone, wiping down already clean counters, staring at the glowing espresso machine like it might whisper the solution. Mark kept telling me, "You've got to fight back. Discounts, flyers, events, something." But every idea I came up with seemed like it would cost more than I could afford. The truth was, Raven wasn't just competing, they were bleeding me out, one customer at a time, and then came the night I caught one of their employees in my shop, pretending to order a latte but really snapping photos of my menu and pastry case. That's when I realized this wasn't just business. It was war. The next morning, I didn't even open the shop right away. I sat at the counter with a notebook, scrawling out every idea I could think of, half-baked or not. Buy one, get one free Mondays. Trivia nights. Latte happy hour. I even considered giving away free cookies with every drink, but when I checked my inventory, I realized I couldn't afford to keep the pastry case stocked if I did. Still, I had to try something. That Monday, I rolled out double stamp days for our loyalty cards. Buy one drink, get 2 stamps instead of 1. I posted about it on Instagram and even boosted the post with $50 I didn't really have. The first day brought in a small bump, but by Wednesday it was back to crickets. Meanwhile, Raven was everywhere. Their baristas posted TikToks with perfect lighting and moody music. Their latte art was ridiculous. Swans, dragons, entire city skylines in foam, and they somehow got featured in a local lifestyle magazine within their first month. I couldn't even get the free neighborhood newsletter to return my emails. I started running myself ragged. Opening at 6 a.m., closing at 9 p.m., barely eating, trying to come up with reasons to keep the lights on a little longer in case someone wandered in. Every hour I stayed open was another few dollars on the electric bill, but shutting early felt like giving up. By the end of the month, I'd made just enough to cover rent and utilities, but not the supplier bill. I had to beg the bakery to give me another week to pay for pastries, promising them I'd make it up. They agreed, but I could hear the doubt in their voice. One Friday evening, I finally broke. I was alone in the shop, wiping down the espresso machine for the 3rd time, when I checked the bank account on my phone. The number staring back at me was $43.17. That was it. No savings, no backup. Just $43.17. I remember leaning against the counter, my chest tight, thinking, this is it. I'm going to lose everything I've built in less than 2 months. That's when the bell above the door jingled, and I looked up to see someone I hadn't spoken to in years, someone who, for better or worse, was about to change the course of the fight. It was Claire. Back in college, she'd been my closest friend, the kind of person who could talk me into doing anything from midnight road trips to skipping class for a music festival 2 states away. We'd lost touch after graduation, drifting into our own worlds. She looked almost the same, just sharper somehow, tailored blazer, confidence stride, the faintest smirk as she took in the shop. "Wow," she said, glancing around. "So this is yours." "I've been hearing things." That last part made my stomach twist. "Good things, I hope?" She raised an eyebrow. "Depends on who you ask." Word is, Raven's killing you. It stung, mostly because it was true. I tried to play it off, pouring her a coffee on the house. She took a slow sip, then leaned on the counter. "I work in marketing now," she said. "Small business turnarounds. Usually restaurants and cafes. I've saved a few that were circling the drain." My heart jumped, but I kept my voice even. "And you're here because?" "Because," she said, "I think I can save this place. But it's going to take more than cute chalkboards and 2-for-1 punch cards." She laid out her plan in broad strokes: rebranding, pop-up events, collaborations with local artists, aggressive social media targeting. It sounded bold, maybe even brilliant. But every idea came with a price tag, and I had $43 to my name. When I told her that, she just smiled. "I'll front the first round of costs," she said. "You pay me back when you're in the black. But there's one condition." I waited. "You have to let me run the playbook my way. No second guessing. No backing out halfway." It felt like a lifeline. It also felt like handing over my last shred of control. But looking around at the empty shop, I knew I didn't have the luxury of pride. "All right," I said. "I'm in." Claire grinned like she'd been waiting for that. "Good. Then buckle up. We're going to make Raven wish they'd never set foot in this neighborhood." Claire didn't waste a second. By the next morning, she was in the shop at 6 a.m. with a laptop, a stack of mock-up flyers, and a camera bag. She started by overhauling our Instagram. Gone were my dimly lit coffee cup photos, replaced with high-contrast shots of steaming mugs, smiling faces, and close-ups of hands pulling perfect espresso shots. She even staged a crowded cafe scene by inviting her own friends to sit around with laptops and lattes, snapping photos that made it look like we were the busiest spot in town. Then came the events. Thursday nights became open mic and mocha sessions, where local musicians could perform in exchange for free drinks. Saturdays turned into latte art battles streamed live on Instagram. Claire contacted a dozen food bloggers and accidentally sent them vouchers for free drinks, knowing they'd post about it. Within 2 weeks, I saw the difference. Mornings were busy again, maybe not like opening day, but enough to feel alive. We even had a few lines at lunch. For the first time in weeks, I went to the bank with a deposit that didn't make me want to cry, but Claire's tactics weren't just creative, they were aggressive. She started running targeted ads directly against Raven, using phrases like, "Why pay more for less?" and "Skip the pretentious latte, come where the coffee is real." She had one of her friends leave a scathing 1-star review on Raven's Google page, calling their coffee burnt and their staff arrogant. I told her I wasn't sure about playing dirty, but she waved me off. They started it when they moved in. This is war, remember. And the thing was, it was working. Raven's traffic slowed just enough that a few of their regulars wandered into my shop just to see what the fuss was about. Some stayed. Claire kept pushing, always with another scheme in her back pocket. One Friday afternoon, as we closed up after our best sales day since opening, Claire leaned across the counter and said, "Next week, we go for the kill." I wanted to ask what she meant, but the look in her eyes told me it was better not to, because once I knew I might not be able to stop her. Claire showed up Monday morning with a manila folder and the kind of grin that meant trouble. She waited until the morning rush died down, then slid the folder across the counter. Inside were printouts, emails, screenshots, even a couple of blurry photos. "What am I looking at?" I asked. "Raven's health inspection records," she said, tapping one page. "And let's just say they're not as squeaky clean as they pretend to be. Minor infractions mostly, but enough to make people think twice before buying their oat milk lattes." I stared at the papers. "Where did you even get this?" She gave a little shrug. "Let's just say I have a friend in the right office. Completely legal." Public records, just not widely publicized. Her kill plan was simple: anonymously leak the inspection reports to the same local bloggers who'd promoted Raven when they opened. Include a few carefully worded lines suggesting there might be more violations yet to be uncovered. Let the gossip machine do the rest. I felt my stomach knot. So, smear them. That's the big plan. Not smear, she said, leaning in. Expose. They made you bleed out for weeks. They took your customers. This is just leveling the field. Part of me wanted to agree, wanted to watch Raven feel the same panic I'd lived with every day for the last month. But another part of me knew this crossed a line I might never uncross. Claire must have read the hesitation on my face because she slid the folder closer. You don't have to put your name on it. No one will ever know it came from you. But you will know that you did what it took to save your business. I stood there for a long moment, the hum of the espresso machine filling the silence, the papers burning against my fingertips. It was the first time since signing that lease that I felt like I had power, and the first time I wasn't sure if I wanted it. I took the folder home that night, but I didn't open it again. It sat on my kitchen table while I made dinner, while I scrolled through my phone, while I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Every time I thought about it, I saw two versions of the future. In one, I handed the folder back to Claire, told her we'd fight fair, and somehow scraped by on charm and caffeine until either we won or the lease broke me. In the other, I sent those documents out into the world, watched Raven take the hit, and maybe, finally, breathed again without feeling like the ground was giving way under me. At 3 in the morning, I found myself in front of my laptop, the folder open, reading every line. Violations about improper milk storage. A small rodent problem in the back storeroom. A mislabeled cleaning chemical. None of it was shocking if you'd ever worked in food service. All of it could look bad if spun the right way. The next day, Claire came in early, clearly expecting an answer. So, she said, setting her bag on the counter. I hesitated. If we do this, what happens if it backfires? What if people find out it came from us? They won't, she said confidently. I've done this before. It works. Her certainty was tempting. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't about whether we could pull it off. It was about whether I'd be able to look at myself in the mirror afterward. The bell over the door jingled, and an older man walked in. He was one of my few remaining regulars from week 1. As I made his coffee, he smiled and said, "Glad you're still here. Places like this, good people, honest work, they're worth supporting." That hit harder than it should have. I watched him leave, coffee in hand, and the decision crystallized in my mind. I went to the back, found Claire scrolling through her phone, and slid the folder back across the table. "We're not doing it," I said. Her smile faded. "You're making a mistake." "Maybe," I said. "But at least it'll be mine." She looked at me for a long moment, then zipped the folder into her bag. "Fine. But don't say I didn't warn you." What I didn't know then was that walking away from that plan wouldn't just change the business, it would change everything about where I ended up next. The next 2 months were a slow bleed. Even with Claire's earlier marketing push, the initial momentum faded. The event still drew small crowds, but nothing close to what we needed. Every week, the gap between my expenses and income widened. I started juggling bills, paying the electric late so I could keep the suppliers happy, then catching up on rent while ignoring the water bill. Raven, meanwhile, seemed untouchable. They kept rolling out new seasonal drinks, hosting flashy community events, even hiring a local influencer to film day-in-the-life vlogs behind their counter. Every time I scrolled social media, it was like they were taunting me. Claire stayed for another month, trying to spin new angles, but I could feel her frustration growing. She didn't bring up the folder again, but I knew she thought my refusal had sealed the shop's fate. By the end of February, she stopped coming in altogether. The day it ended wasn't dramatic. No screaming landlord, no final customer walking out the door. Just me, standing in the middle of the empty cafe on a gray Tuesday, holding a notice from my bank that the last of my emergency credit line had been used. There was nothing left, no cash, no cards, no tricks. I locked the door, flipped the sign to closed, and knew it wasn't coming back. I spent the next week clearing the place out, selling off equipment to cover what little I could. When the landlord came for the keys, he didn't even pretend to be surprised. For the first time in years, I had nowhere to be in the mornings. I sent out resumes, applying for anything I thought I could stomach. I didn't expect much. After all, my last job had ended with me saying, "I'm leaving to chase my dream." Not exactly the kind of thing that impresses hiring managers when your dream ends in bankruptcy. Then, 2 weeks later, I got an email. A small but rapidly growing bakery chain was looking for an operations manager. They'd seen photos of my shop's interior online and wanted to talk. At the interview, the owner asked about my time running the cafe. I told her the truth, every success, every failure, even the war with Raven. She listened without interrupting, then said, "You've learned more in 1 year than most people do in 10. We could use that." I walked out of that meeting with a job offer that paid better than my old accounting position and didn't require me to choose between survival and my morals. And while part of me still ached over losing the cafe, a bigger part knew that if I'd gone through with Claire's plan, I might have kept the shop, but lost myself in the process. In the months that followed, I often walked past that block. Raven was still there, bustling as ever, their windows lit with warm light and the smell of coffee drifting onto the street. For a while, every glance at that corner was like a punch to the gut, a reminder of what I'd lost. But with time, something shifted. I stopped seeing it as the place that beat me and started seeing it as the place that taught me who I was willing to be when it mattered. I realized that not every win is worth the cost, and not every loss leaves you empty-handed. One rainy afternoon, I sat in my new office at the bakery chain, sipping a cup of coffee I didn't make, watching my team work in the kitchen. It wasn't my cafe, but it was mine in a different way, my ideas, my leadership, my vision shaping something bigger than I could have imagined when I signed that lease. I thought about Claire sometimes, wondering if she still believed I'd made a mistake. Maybe she did. But I knew this much. The night I pushed that folder back to her, I didn't just refuse to destroy my competitor. I chose the kind of person I could live with being, and in the end, that was the one decision that saved me, even if it didn't save my shop. What about you? If you were in my shoes, would you have taken the shot and destroyed your competitor, or walked away like I did?